If I could make it through the next 10 minutes, everything I had sacrificed, the sleepless nights, the times I was dismissed, the meetings where I had to nod just so others could finish their speeches, would finally mean something. Morning sunlight in Austin cut through the glass walls of Novacor Energy's 47th floor, slicing into cold beams across the long conference table. The room smelled of money and new metal, that strange mix of technology and ambition. Across from me sat 12 people in dark suits, the European Union delegation, who had flown halfway around the world just to hear me speak. I kept my voice steady, no tremor, no rush. The hybrid grid algorithm will increase storage efficiency by 40% without breaching safety thresholds. It's the foundation you need to meet sustainability standards. A few nods, the soft click of a pen signing. I allowed myself one quiet breath. 11 months, all leading to this. Just a few more minutes and the deal would be done. Novacor would enter a new era. Then the door opened. A voice sliced through the room like glass breaking. Sorry, I'm a bit late. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Ethan Cole, the new vice president, handpicked by the CEO only weeks ago. He walked in with the scent of expensive cologne mixed with cold coffee. No apology, no glance at anyone. He simply took the chair beside me. Ethan always knew how to take up space, not with intelligence, but with volume. His navy suit was perfectly tailored, his hair slicked back, his half smile the kind worn by men who believe appearance alone can command loyalty. Sorry to interrupt, he said with a confident grin. I just wanted to join in since I heard we're about to make history today. I didn't answer. My eyes stayed on the screen where the EU representative was waiting. We're nearly done, I said, forcing calm into my tone. Ethan leaned back, fingers interlocked. Excellent. Then I'll take it from here. The room stilled. The man on the screen frowned. I turned to him. Take it from here? Yes, he said evenly. We're restructuring global leadership. I'll be overseeing the implementation phase. Ava will move into an advisory role. No one in the room breathed. His words cut the air like a blade. I heard my heartbeat in my ears. I'd endured enough of these so-called role transitions, the polite way of erasing someone once they've done the dirty work. I looked straight at him, voice low. Ethan, this isn't the time. He interrupted immediately. Relax, Ava. Everyone knows you did great groundwork, but strategy now requires a different vision. A hollow laugh rippled from the European side. I couldn't tell if it was awkwardness or ignorance. The air grew thick. I could feel the pitying eyes on me. All the years I'd tried to speak gracefully, precisely, intelligently, condensed into this one silent moment. I clenched my fists under the table. Just to be clear, I said, turning. Toward the screen, this decision was never communicated to me before today's meeting. I want that on record. Ethan smirked. Of course, I'll make a note of it. Good, I said, because when this deal collapses, I want everyone to know exactly who killed it. A pause. His smile twitched. Barely, but enough. I'd hit the nerve. I faced the EU representative. We'll take a short recess to resolve internal matters. My apologies for the disruption. The man nodded, tense. The call ended. The screen went black. Silence. Ethan leaned back, exhaled. Smoother than I expected, he said, straightening his cufflinks. I gathered my papers one by one. My hands still trembled, but my voice didn't. You know something, Ethan? I said, standing. You just made the biggest mistake of your career. He looked up, smirking. You always say that. The difference, I said quietly, is this time you'll see it happen. I walked out, each step echoing against the marble floor like the ticking of a countdown clock. Passing the glass wall engraved with Novacor Energy, powering tomorrow, I whispered to myself. Then tomorrow starts here. Outside, the Texas sun burned sharp gold across the concrete. No one in the lobby spoke as I passed. Just the sound of my heels, blending with the chill hum of the air conditioning and a few sidelong glances. The glass doors closed behind me, and that was the end, at least the end they thought I'd accept. The wind brushed past. I looked up at the sky, bitter but strangely light. Deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. And maybe, somehow, you've lived a moment like that too, when someone tried to push you out of something you built with your own hands. So I wonder, what would you do? Walk away quietly or take back your place? Tell me where you're listening from. I want to know which part of your story you're in. If you enjoy stories about resilience, about people who rise again with intelligence and grit, don't forget to follow, because what comes next is where everything truly begins. I drove away from Novacore headquarters in silence. On the back seat, a cardboard box rattled softly with every turn. Inside were a few personal things: a photo of my mother, a worn leather notebook, and my employee badge that I hadn't decided whether to throw away or keep. Rain began to fall in fine streaks against the windshield, blurring the streetlights into long trails like memories sliding out of focus. I pulled into the familiar lot near the narrow road that led home. The clouds over Austin hung thick and gray, exactly how I felt inside. For a moment, I wanted to keep driving, maybe to Dallas, maybe farther, just to avoid thinking about Ethan's smug face. But I went home because someone was waiting there. When I opened the door, Leo was sitting on the couch, laptop open, headphones hanging loosely around his neck. My younger brother, a second-year engineering student, looked up. His usual smile appeared, then vanished when he saw me. What happened? I tried to smile. It's nothing, just a long day. He didn't ask more. Leo was the kind who knew when silence said enough. I went straight to my room, took off my jacket, and sat on the edge of the bed. My mind spun, not because I'd been dismissed, but because of how they did it. In the middle of an international meeting, in front of people whose trust had taken me nearly a year to build, I unlocked my phone. Messages flooded in, a few polite condolences from former colleagues, some nosy questions from those who once saw me as competition. I didn't answer any of them. Only one made me pause. It came from an unknown number. Just one short line. If you're leaving Novacore, we'd still like to work with you. No name, no signature, just a single period at the end. But I knew who it was, one of the European partners who once told me they trusted people, not titles. That message was like a breath in the middle of a storm, just enough to remind me there was still a way forward. Night fell. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching the rain streak down through the glow of passing cars. I thought about my mother, the one who had died when I just started college. She'd been a physics teacher at a public school, always telling me that energy never disappears, it only transforms. Maybe faith works the same way. I'd lost my job, my title, but not the meaning behind what I'd built. It was still out there somewhere, waiting to transform into something new. Thunder rolled in the distance. I opened my notebook, turned to the last page, and wrote in fine, careful letters: "They can take the business card, but not the skill. If they don't want me in their game, I'll build another table." When I looked up, it was almost midnight. Leo was still awake, typing something on his laptop. I watched him for a moment, that old weight of responsibility creeping back: tuition, rent, the mortgage I knew, down to the last digit. I realized I didn't have the luxury of staying down. The next morning, I woke early. The Austin sky was still dull and hazy, but I no longer felt heavy. I turned on my computer and logged into my old company account one last time. My email access was gone, just a dry notice on the screen: user not found. I gave a short laugh, poured another cup of coffee, and opened my personal profile. It had been ages since I touched it. My fingers hovered for a second, then I typed: Ava Reynolds, independent energy consultant. I didn't know why, but that simple act made it easier to breathe. Maybe I still didn't know what would come next, but at least I'd reclaimed the right to name myself. By noon, a message appeared from Olivia Tran, my best friend, a labor attorney. She wrote, "Heard what happened yesterday. Don't say anything yet. Meet me this afternoon at our old cafe. I've got something you need to see." I read the message, caught between hope and caution. Olivia was one of the few people I still trusted, and maybe, if anyone could help turn this fall into an opening, it was her. I closed the laptop, grabbed my coat, and stepped outside. The rain had stopped. The air after the storm carried the scent of wet soil and new sunlight. For the first time in months, I felt certain of something. Everything that had fallen apart was also making space for something to be rebuilt. I just didn't know what that would be yet, but I was ready to find out. I arrived at the cafe before our meeting time. It sat on the corner of South Congress, the same place Olivia and I used to spend hours during our early startup days. The smell of roasted coffee, the soft background music, and the warm yellow light always made me feel like I was stepping back into my student years, when everything was simpler, when failure was just a lesson, not a sentence. Olivia walked in right on time. Gray coat, hair neatly tied, the same quick stride and sharp gaze that could slice through excuses. She didn't waste time. She placed a folder on the table, opened it, and slid a thin stack of papers toward me. "What's this?" I asked. She lowered her voice, almost a whisper. "Your contract with Novacor. I have a copy HR sent me 2 years ago when they asked for my review. I just checked it again. Ethan hasn't completed the termination paperwork. You're not bound by any confidentiality or non-compete clause." I stared at the line on the page. Non-compete clause. Pending update. A clerical error, simple and small, but in the corporate world, it was a crack in the armor. I looked up, and Olivia smiled faintly. "It means, Ava, you can do whatever you want, as long as you dare to start over." Her words echoed in my head like the first sound after a long silence. I'd spent a decade at Novacor believing that skill would bring fairness, but I'd forgotten that in that world, fairness only exists for those who know how to create it. We sat quietly for a while. I looked out the window where the late afternoon sun hit the pavement in slanted lines. A thought began to form, not clear, not complete, but alive. If I no longer belong to Novacor, why not build one of my own? Olivia caught the look in my eyes. "You're thinking what I'm thinking, aren't you?" I nodded. She opened her laptop and began typing. "We can register an independent consulting firm. No need for a big office. Just a legal address, a website, and a few people who actually know what they're doing. You already have potential clients." I remembered the anonymous message from the other night. Yes, they had said they wanted to collaborate if I ever left Novacor. Slowly, I said, "I know who our first client will be." Olivia grinned and reached across the table. "Welcome to the free world, Ava." I shook her hand, the gesture feeling both strange and real. After she left, I stayed a little longer, opened my notebook, and wrote 2 words on a clean page: Lumacor. I didn't know why that name came to me. Maybe because I wanted something that meant light, but still had a solid core. That evening, I told Leo about the plan. He looked surprised, then smiled. "You always have a plan, even when people think you've run out of options." I laughed. "Someone has to pay your tuition." He nodded, then asked softly, "Are you scared?" I paused. Yes. But fear doesn't mean stop. 2 days later, I met Martin Vega, a veteran investor who had backed Novacor in its early days. He was one of the few who had believed in me back when I was the only one in the boardroom willing to challenge the old CEO. I handed him Lumacor's draft plan, concise, focused on strategic consulting and clean energy management. When he finished reading, he leaned back, thoughtful. "Ava, are you planning to become their competitor?" I smiled. "No. I'm planning to do what they forgot how to do." He didn't reply right away, just nodded quietly. The next morning, a transfer appeared in my account, enough to get started. No conditions attached, only a note. Don't let them rewrite your story. 1 week later, Lumacor officially existed. A small company, just me, Leo, and 2 former engineers Ethan had laid off during the downsizing. We rented a corner office in a co-working space in Austin, hung a temporary plastic sign, and began rebuilding everything from scratch. Meanwhile, Novacor held a grand press conference. Ethan stood center stage, boasting that the company had successfully finalized the EU deal, a lie I knew firsthand. I watched his speech on my laptop, coffee in hand. His face was confident, proud, repeating the same ideas I'd once presented in countless meetings. I wasn't angry, I wasn't jealous, I just found it amusing. He truly believed that power lived under the spotlight. He didn't understand that real power belongs to those who wait until the lights go out. I closed the video and opened Lumacor's project file. At the top of the contact list was a familiar name, Henri Dupont, the one who had sent me that message. I pressed call. When his deep, steady voice came through, I said, "Let's start again. This time, no one gets in the way." At that moment, I knew I had crossed the line between past and future. I was no longer Ava from Novacor. I was Ava Reynolds, the woman rewriting her own rules. 3 months passed faster than I expected. Austin shifted seasons. The sunlight softened, and the morning air carried the scent of pine wood and roasted coffee from the corner cafe. Lumicore's small office sat on the second floor of an old building, not fancy, but high enough to see the sky. We worked in a cramped space with worn out desks and tangled cables, but everything ran in rhythm. There was I, Leo, two engineers, and a young new associate. We all worked in quiet focus and trust. From Europe, Henri sent weekly emails, short questions, detailed feedback. Every line he wrote reminded me that we were heading in the right direction. But while I was busy planning new projects outside, Ethan had started to sense something. That morning, an article appeared on an energy forum. Title: Ethical Breach in Novacore's Supply Chain. Questions about Environmental Safety. The author wasn't named, but the piece quoted internal data, precise down to the last decimal. It spread quickly among investors' social feeds. An hour later, a financial analyst posted publicly on LinkedIn: Is Novacore hiding technical data? I read the news in the office. Leo looked up. Did you do it? I smirked. I don't have to. The truth has its own way of finding daylight. That afternoon, Ethan called an emergency meeting. I knew because someone from PR, an old friend, phoned me. His voice was low, almost a whisper. He's losing it. I said only one thing. He's going to lose more than that. Ethan didn't sit still. The next day, Novacore released a press statement denying all allegations, calling the article a smear campaign from a disgruntled former employee. They didn't name me. They didn't have to. Everyone already knew. That evening, a strange message appeared in my inbox. Stop before this gets out of hand. Consider this a warning. No sender, no signature. I stared at the screen, then deleted it. If they thought I'd be scared, they were wrong. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted the truth to be seen. But I also knew that if I stayed silent, they'd bury me deeper. 2 days later, I scheduled a video call with Henri. His face appeared calm and steady. Are you all right, Ava? I'm fine. But I need your help. I sent him Lumicore's latest analysis, a safer, more transparent energy storage system that didn't rely on toxic materials like Novacore's technology. Henri scanned the report, his eyes lighting up. We'll discuss a formal partnership, he said. I think the world's ready for an alternative. After the call ended, I leaned back in my chair. Part of me felt lighter. Another part was wound tight as a wire. I knew Ethan wouldn't stay quiet once he realized Lumicore was beginning to draw attention. And I was right. A few days later, a segment aired on a national finance network. Ethan appeared with his familiar smile, talking about global vision and Novacore's stability. Near the end, the anchor asked, There are rumors that some former employees are trying to compete with your company. Do you have any comments? Ethan looked straight at the camera, smile unchanged. We've always encouraged innovation, but if someone chooses to destroy instead of build, maybe they never understood what makes a company great. I watched the interview in our office, the evening light flickering on the screen. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even bitter. I just felt sorry for him. He truly believed words could rewrite reality. I turned to Leo and said quietly, Sometimes, to make a building fall, you don't need to hit it. You just take away its foundation. No one spoke. We all knew. This wasn't about business anymore. It was about belief. Between those who painted illusions and those willing to face what's real. The next day, I got a call from someone I hadn't expected. A deep male voice, slow and deliberate. This is Jordan Hale, investigative reporter from The Atlantic. I think you have a story to tell. I paused before answering. Maybe. But I won't talk if you're just after a headline. I don't do headlines, he said. I tell what others try to hide. I looked out the window where the evening sky was fading over Austin. Then I said, Then maybe we'll have something to talk about. When I hung up, my chest felt heavy, like I'd just set down a stone. This wasn't just me versus Ethan anymore. It was becoming something larger, something neither of us could control. And once the truth began to surface, there would be no stopping it. I met Jordan Hale 2 days later at a small cafe by the Colorado River. He'd arrived early, choosing a quiet corner with his back to the window, the light falling just enough to reveal the sharp angles of his face and the steady eyes of a man who'd seen more secrets than was safe. Jordan didn't waste words. He set a recorder on the table, his voice low and even. "I'm not here to attack anyone. I just want to understand what really happened inside Novacor." I looked straight at him. "And if the truth destroys them, will you still publish it?" He raised an eyebrow. "You think I do this job because I'm afraid of losing ad money?" I was silent for a few seconds. Then I began to talk. I told him how Ethan took control, how he cut the senior engineers, and replaced them with people who knew when to nod. I told him about the falsified numbers, the environmental reports edited to pass government review. Jordan kept writing. He didn't act surprised, only nodded occasionally, as if he'd heard hundreds of stories like this before, but knew mine was different, because I had proof. When I handed him the hard drive, he studied me for a long moment. "You know you're stepping into dangerous ground, right?" I said. "I've been there since the day they erased my name from the meeting list." We parted before sunset. I drove home with that strange weight in my chest. Not fear exactly, but the feeling of walking across a suspension bridge, knowing freedom waited ahead, and one wrong step could send it all crashing down. 3 days later, the first article went live. No mention of my name, no mention of Lumacor, just an investigation into Novacor's concealed battery manufacturing flaws, backed by internal documents. It spread faster than I expected. Major outlets started calling Novacor. The stock price dipped slightly, though Ethan appeared unfazed. He went on another televised interview, the light soft on his face, his tone confident as ever. He called it a misunderstanding, said every data set was undergoing an independent review. But I knew, behind those lights, he was losing control. That evening, Olivia showed up at my door. She didn't say hello. She just dropped a newspaper on the table. "They're looking for you, Ava." I looked up. "Looking for me?" She nodded. "Someone from Novacor's legal department leaked it. Ethan is gathering evidence to charge you with breach of confidentiality. They want to scare you into backing off." I was quiet for a while. Then I asked, "If they try, can they win?" Olivia shook her head. "You're not bound by any confidentiality clause. I checked again. But they don't need truth. They have money, media, and the power to create a story. They don't need proof, just doubt." That made me sit upright. I understood what she meant. In this world, truth doesn't always matter. Timing does. Who says it first, and how loud? I opened my laptop. In my inbox was a new message from Henri. Short, direct, be ready. "We will sign the official contract next week." I read it twice, then turned to Olivia. "If they want to fight, fine, but not while I'm standing alone." She gave me a half smile, half frown. "What are you planning?" I spoke slowly, clearly. "I'm going public with Lumacor. No more hiding. If they want to attack me, they'll have to go after what I'm building. And this time, the whole world will be watching." The next day, Leo and the team worked beside me on the new website. We kept it clean, professional, and full of real data. I wrote the opening line myself. Lumacor, creating clean energy through transparency and intelligence, not promises. 3 days later, the site went live. And only hours after that, Ethan called. I didn't know how he got my number, maybe from a former employee, maybe through curiosity, but his voice came sharp and cold through the speaker. "Ava, I think you've gone too far." "Too far from what, Ethan? From pretending you know what you're doing?" He gave a quiet laugh. "You know, your little victory won't last. I've got teams, lawyers, and an entire system behind me." I looked out the window, where the last light of day reflected on the glass. My voice stayed calm. "And I've got something you'll never have." He paused. "What's that?" "Faith." The line went silent. I set the phone down, my hand trembling slightly. But inside, everything was clearer than ever. I knew after that call, nothing would ever go back to the way it was. And maybe that was exactly what I'd been waiting for all along. News about Lumacor spread faster than anyone expected. Within 3 days, the media began calling the company a promising new player in the clean energy industry. A major tech outlet ran a short feature titled "From Novacor's Fall to Lumacor's Rise," The Story of Ava Reynolds. The article wasn't bold or dramatic. It simply told my story, how I chose to walk away from a corporate giant and start again. But what made it go viral was its closing line. Sometimes, being pushed out the door isn't the end. It's when you realize you can fly. When I read that line, I knew Ethan was reading it too. And I was right. Less than a day later, Novacor responded. They announced a new brand vision, a massive rebranding campaign built around a slogan almost identical to one I'd written 3 years ago: Transparent Energy, Sustainable Future. Billboards, interviews, digital ads. Ethan's face was everywhere. But this time, the public didn't buy it so easily. Under every corporate post were waves of sarcastic comments. Transparent, huh? Like those missing environmental reports? Or they lost their best engineer. What's left but buzzwords? I didn't have to say a word. The internet handled it for me. Meanwhile, Lumicore was growing faster than I could keep up. Henri sent over a European tech team, and Martin Vega, the first investor, connected us with a chain of North American clients. Each day brought dozens of emails, partnership offers, interview requests, and proposals. But I hadn't forgotten Ethan. I knew he wouldn't sit still watching the tide turn against him. And I was right again. One night, Leo rushed into the office, pale and breathless, laptop in hand. You need to see this. On the screen was an anonymous post spreading across industry forums. It accused Lumicore of stealing data and technology from Novacor, claiming I'd used proprietary material for personal gain. The post was long, detailed, written by someone who knew the company inside out, enough to plant real doubt. I finished reading and said nothing. My phone rang. Olivia's voice came sharp and certain. Ethan released it. I just confirmed. The writer is someone from his media team. They're trying to smear you before the official signing with Henri. I stayed quiet for a moment, then asked, "What can we do?" She said, "Hit them where they think you're weakest. Silence. But this time, don't stay quiet." I knew exactly what she meant. That night, I wrote a short post on my personal account. No denials, no outrage, just this. Funny how people who once sat beside me in the same meetings now pretend they don't remember who authored those technical reports. Luckily, I still keep every original file and meeting record. If needed, I'll release them all. Within an hour, the Post had over 200,000 shares. Public opinion flipped overnight. By morning, an independent investigation was published confirming that Lumicore's documentation was entirely legitimate. The blow sent Novacor reeling. Their stock dropped 8% in a single day. Ethan tried to keep his composure, holding a press conference with a strained smile, saying Novacor remains committed to transparency and innovation. I watched the live stream in our office. His voice trembled slightly, his eyes darted, the look of a man forcing himself to believe his own words. When a reporter asked about the independent report, he muttered vaguely, "We're reviewing the credibility of those sources." I turned to Leo and said quietly, "Sometimes you don't need to win. You just let them reveal their own lies." But I knew Ethan wasn't finished. A man like him, once he starts losing control, will burn the whole room down just to feel powerful again. 3 days later, an anonymous email arrived. Only one line. "Check your team. Not everyone's loyal." I read it twice. Then my eyes froze on one name. Miles, the new engineer I'd hired less than a month ago. Smart, disciplined, but sometimes he asked questions that went too deep into the original datasets. I'd never suspected him, but now every small detail began to rearrange itself into something dangerous. That night, I stayed late after everyone left. I logged into our internal system. In the access logs, I saw his name, Miles, appearing in folders far beyond his clearance level, files containing Henri's client data. A chill spread through me. I knew exactly what that meant. Novacor had planted someone inside Lumicore. I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window. The city lights still glowed, but inside me, a darker shadow had settled. The war wasn't outside anymore. It had slipped in, and for the first time since it all began, I felt real fear. I couldn't sleep that night. The computer screen still glowed when the clock passed 2 in the morning. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioner. I stared at the access log again, line by line. There was no mistake. Miles had entered the secure directory 3 times in the past 2 days. And not just viewed the files, he'd downloaded several documents tied to the contract with Henri. I picked up my phone and texted Olivia, urgent, need to meet tomorrow morning. She replied almost instantly, understood. By sunrise, I was already at the office. The Austin sky burned a pale orange through the windows. I waited. When Miles walked in, I saw it. The flicker of unease crossing his face, the tightness of someone who suddenly didn't know where to put his hands. Morning, I said, keeping my tone steady. Come to my office in a minute. We need to talk. He hesitated, then nodded. Inside, I closed the door. Just the two of us. I slid a printed sheet of the system log across the desk. He looked down. His face went white. Would you like to explain this? I asked quietly. Miles swallowed hard, trying to collect himself. I was just checking a few parameters. I thought there was a system glitch. There's no glitch, I said. You downloaded files outside your clearance, and those files match the exact data Novacore just used in their internal presentation yesterday. His hands trembled. How much is Ethan paying you? I asked slowly. He didn't answer. Silence stretched so long I could hear the faint tick of the wall clock. You have 2 choices, I said, my voice calm but cold. 1, I take this to the legal and the press. 2, you help me end this by telling me everything you know. A minute passed. Then Miles looked up, eyes wet, voice shaking. I didn't have a choice. They threatened me. Said if I didn't feed them information, they'd leak my old breach of contract file from my last job. I wasn't trying to hurt you, Ava. I was just scared. I studied him. The anger drained away, replaced by something emptier. I knew that feeling too well. The fear of being cornered. Did Ethan contact you directly? Yes, through an anonymous account, but it was him. Everything came through the company VPN. He wanted the European client data and your project roadmap. I didn't send everything yet, but he said if I stopped, he'd ruin my career anywhere I applied. I took a deep breath. That was the biggest mistake Ethan could have made. From now on, I said, you'll do exactly what I tell you. You'll keep talking to him. You'll keep pretending to send data. But everything will be recorded. Miles stared at me. You're setting him up? I nodded. If Ethan wants a war, I'll give him one, but on my terms. That afternoon, Olivia and I met at her law office. She listened, jotting notes quickly. If we can prove Ethan ordered someone to infiltrate Lumacore's system, she said, it's not just him. Novacore, as a corporation, will face AES, full federal investigation. She tore a sheet from her notebook and handed it to me. I'll help you handle this cleanly. Just make sure Miles cooperates. Back at the office, I felt cold, alert. Everyone worked as usual. Leo looked up from his desk, concern written on his face. Everything okay? I smiled faintly. It will be. I just need to finish a few things before everything starts to change. Over the next 3 days, Miles followed the plan. He sent Ethan decoy files, harmless copies of old data with a few details I'd planted myself. Every transmission was captured through Olivia's recording software. On the 3rd night, Ethan took the bait. He emailed back, thanking Miles and asking for the remaining financial documents from Henri. He even promised a bonus transfer once it was done. Every word logged. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. It was over, or close enough. But instead of satisfaction, I felt hollow. No one really wins in wars like this, only those who endure long enough to survive them. The next morning, an email from Olivia arrived. Subject line, case ready. Her message was short. I've sent everything to the Federal Trade Investigation Bureau. They'll take it from here. Now do the most important thing. Stay steady when the storm begins. I closed the laptop and looked out the window. Rain hammered against the glass, pouring down in heavy sheets, city lights fractured in the reflection. I knew that when this storm passed, either I'd lose everything or I'd be the last one still standing. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, whatever happens, this time, no one else gets to write my ending. The storm came exactly as Olivia warned. On Monday morning, Austin was damp after a night of rain. I arrived at the office to find Leo and the engineers gathered around the big screen. The National Finance Channel was on, the anchor's calm voice cutting each word like a cold blade. The Federal Trade Commission has officially opened an investigation into allegations of data intrusion and trade espionage involving Novacor Energy. Internal sources indicate preliminary evidence points to direct orders from senior management. Ethan Cole's name flashed on the screen with the banner, Vice President of Novacor accused of data manipulation. I stood motionless, gripping my coffee so hard I felt the heat through the paper cup. The room was deathly quiet. Leo murmured that they actually did it. I nodded, but couldn't breathe out. Everything moved faster than I expected. Olivia had kept her promise. That afternoon, Martin Vega called. His voice was steady as always, but there was a new, quiet respect in it. I just watched the news, he said. Ava, you did what very few would dare do, bringing light where no one wanted to look. But be ready. People like Ethan never fall after one blow, I answered. I know. He will fight back. But this time, I don't have to hide anymore. Martin gave a soft laugh. Good. And so, the investment board met this morning. After what happened, they want to reallocate part of Novacor's contract to Lumacor. You might need to prepare for something bigger than you expected. I sat there, my pulse slowing. He meant the North America Grid Integration Project, the one I had dreamed of at Novacor, the one Ethan stole from me at the last minute. And now it was coming back to me the same way he once took it away. That night, I came home late. Leo was asleep. I sat in the dark with the phone light on my face. Social feeds buzzed, the investment channels talked nonstop. Novacor issued an emergency statement suspending Ethan pending the investigation. Papers called me a quiet whistleblower. I don't like that label. I never wanted to be a symbol. I just wanted respect, the thing they stole for so long. Around midnight, I got a call from an unknown number. I knew who it was, but still picked up. Ethan's voice was hoarse and metallic. You think you won? He asked. I stayed silent and let the emptiness answer for me. You don't understand, he said. I did what anyone in my position would do. You are destroying everything, and you will be pulled under with it, I replied quietly. You don't understand that I no longer fear being pulled under. I don't build castles on sand like you. He was silent for a few seconds, then let out a short, tired laugh. Do you really believe justice exists? In this world, the powerful always win. I answered slowly and deliberately. Real power is the ability to rise again when others think you've fallen. There was a pause on his end. Then he muttered almost to himself. You're the only person I can't control and said you never had that right. The call ended. I sat there without anger or fear, only a lightness. Ethan was still the same man who treated everything like a game, only now he was losing and refusing to accept it. The next morning, Olivia messaged that Novacor has officially lost negotiation rights with the EU. The FTC has expanded the probe. You need to prepare to speak to the press. I read it and my chest sank. I knew this moment was coming when every light would point at me, and there would be nowhere left to hide. That afternoon, I stood in Lumacor's small meeting room under the white ceiling light. The team sat around me, eyes on me. I looked at every face, the people who stayed when no one believed, who chose belief over safety. Tomorrow we face the world, I said. They will ask, doubt, and scrutinize every word, but we don't have to defend. We only need to tell the truth, Leo asked quietly. What about Ethan? I looked at him, voice steady. He will finish his own story. I don't have to do anything more. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood on the balcony in the cold wind. Below, the city still glowed and buzzed, as if nothing had changed. But I knew that when the sun rose, the energy industry would change. Not because of one article or one investigation, but because, for the first time, someone in that room said no to the powerful. I closed my eyes, listened to the wind, and whispered to myself, tomorrow I will not seek revenge. I will reclaim justice. That morning, the sky over Austin was impossibly clear. Soft sunlight spread across the glass towers, breaking into sharp reflections that looked almost alive. I stood behind the press room door, microphone in hand, the noise outside rising and falling like the tide. Olivia touched my shoulder gently and whispered, "Breathe, Ava. This part belongs to you." I nodded. No more trembling like the day Ethan humiliated me in that meeting. No more fear of proving I belonged. Only stillness. The calm of someone who's walked through storms and knows that if another comes, she'll still be standing. When I stepped out, flashes exploded across the room. Dozens of reporters rose, cameras trained on me. Behind the podium, the Lumicore logo glowed simple and small, a circle of soft blue light on a white background. It didn't need to shine. It only needed to be clear. I placed the microphone in front of me and looked straight at the rows of lenses. Thank you for being here today. I don't have a long statement, only the truth. Lumicore wasn't founded out of revenge. It exists to prove that in the energy industry, and in any industry, ethics isn't a burden, it's a form of power. A reporter raised his hand. "Ms. Reynolds, do you feel vindicated now that Novacore is under investigation? Was this your goal from the start?" I met his eyes, voice steady. "I don't feel vindicated, because this isn't a victory. When the truth is hidden, everyone loses, including me. I only did what should have been done long ago." The room went silent for a moment. Even the camera shutters paused. Then another reporter asked, "Do you think Ethan Cole will be prosecuted?" I exhaled slowly. "I'm not a court. I don't wish anyone to fall. I just hope they learn the cost of arrogance. If he does, then I'm ready to forgive." That answer spread faster than I expected. Headlines called me the woman who won without revenge. But they didn't know the truth, that the wounds were still there. I'd just learned not to let them guide me anymore. 3 weeks later, Novacore announced a full restructuring. Ethan Cole was dismissed, his case transferred to federal investigators. New leadership took over while international partners began pulling out of their contracts. The market called it an inevitable collapse. To me, it was simply the natural end of a system built on deceit. As for Lumicore, we didn't celebrate. We just kept working. The North American project was officially signed, worth twice what Novacore once held. Henri sent a short message. "Justice takes the shape of light." I read it several times before saving it. One afternoon, sunlight filtered through the window as I sat at my desk. Leo walked in with 2 cups of coffee. "I still can't believe how far you've come," he said, half smiling, half amazed. I took the cup, sipped, and said, "I didn't go anywhere, Leo. I just stayed when everyone else chose to leave." He nodded, then asked softly, "So, is it over now?" A looked out at the river, where the water shimmered under the late sun. "No. Stories like this never really end. But from now on, at least, we get to choose how we tell them." That night, I walked alone through the city. The streets were loud, traffic endless. I passed the old Novacore Tower, its silver emblem still gleaming high above. I stopped, staring at the 47th floor, the place where everything had fallen apart. The lights were off now. I felt no anger, only peace. I pulled out my phone, opened notes, and typed one line. "Not every failure is a loss. Sometimes it's the universe clearing a path for you to walk." I saved it, slipped the phone back into my pocket, and kept walking through the glow and noise. In the distance, the city still shone, like the light I once thought I'd lost. But now I understood it had never gone out. It was only waiting for the right person to bring it back. And this time I knew for certain that the person was me. I stopped at the corner, the night wind brushing through my hair, carrying the scent of the city, familiar and new all at once. Everything was finally still. I smiled, not because I'd won, but because justice, at last, had found its own voice. And what about you? Which moment stayed with you most? The betrayal, or the moment I stood back up and reclaimed myself? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and if you believe that truth always finds its way, follow along for more stories where justice isn't just spoken, it's lived. Thank you for listening.